I think we are broadcasting out to the universe now that Lionel Messi is in Miami and the United States of America. Welcome into Major League Journeymen. Happy to have you alongside Alan Gordon and Dax McCarty, fresh off what I would characterize as the next stage of our lives and the next stage of Major League Soccer and soccer here in the United States of America. Dax, did you cream your pants when you saw Leo score that goal in the 93rd minute? Yes or no?
I didn't know. I got very excited. Yes. Wow. What an entrance into Major League Soccer. And let me just say also, for our loyal listeners that listened to the last one, the one where we talked about Leo and the, let's call it special treatment from the referees, if you will. Hey boys, look, I don't know if we're all oracles or what, but we called it. The foul that wasn't there was called a foul because Leo fell down in between a couple of bodies. And I think David Beckham said it. I think your boy Gordo said it best after the game. It just kind of seemed like it was written in the stars as soon as that free kick was whistled. And you just had a feeling. I don't know. There was just something about the moment, something about that night that it wouldn't have made sense if Leo didn't put one in the top corner. And it's just the fact that a guy that has so much pressure on his shoulders is able to deliver in that moment is the reason why he's the greatest player of all time. And I won't hear anything else about it.
Does he have pressure? What kind of pressure does he have? What, just to perform and live?
Yeah, I mean, he's people consider him the best, and he's the highest paid athlete now, probably in the world, other than maybe Mbappe, who knows if he's going to accept his crazy money offer. Yeah, I would say that, of course, Messi has pressure. I mean, you can't say he doesn't.
Which is interesting because he just was playing like he had no pressure in the entire world, right? He seemed pretty relaxed and like he was enjoying it. Do you think has he ever gone over and hugged his kids after any goal? Have you ever seen him do that before?
I don't think so. And it's because I think over in Europe, all the luxury boxes where the families sit are probably pretty far away. And I think that's a big part of it, man. I think that's a big part of why he is in the MLS right now, is because his family is going to be able to be there on the sidelines with him. He's going to be able to enjoy, bringing them to training, bringing them to games. It's, I think, the total package of the experience that he will be able to have over here. That was the perfect encapsulation of it. That moment right there, all eyes on him, everyone's phone out, watching him. Him being able to deliver in a big moment for Inter Miami and him being able to celebrate with his kids. I mean, that is the reason why he is in Major League Soccer right now. And it was really a picture perfect moment. I don't think any script writers could have written a better ending for his first appearance.
It sure was. You know what's
Gordo,
crazy?
Did you catch
it? If you guys remember this, but guys like that, they always step up in those big moments, right? And I remember when Beckham first came over here, and I can't remember, we'd have to get Statman Jack to find out what game it was, but we played Barcelona at the Rose Bowl. And there's 110,000 people there, and he hit a free kick to tie the game in the same exact spot. And it was a perfect moment for Bex when he came, and he needed to do it almost, because he got hurt early, like one of the first games, and then Messi does the same thing, and Beckham brings him over. It's like a perfect story that nobody could have written. It's phenomenal.
I feel like these stars and these individuals that just have something else about them. I've obviously been in the locker room with Beckham. He's got like an aura about him, right, Gordo? There are these individuals, these humans that just have this otherworldly presence, and Leo seems to have that. It was also one of those wild moments in watching Serena Williams and watching LeBron James show up to see Leo and to see what he did, and then for him to absolutely perform. I think he's got pressure on him. I think that pressure is a completely different sense of pressure, though. I think that there's layers to it, right? And him performing at PSG or performing at Barcelona or in the World Cup, this is a different sense of pressure and a different sense of responsibility than probably anything that he's used to. To be able to go over and hug his kids after that goal, that was insane. I mean, it was genuinely insane. I was in awe watching on my couch with my kids in him delivering what everybody had hoped that he would, right? And it was nuts. The one question that I did walk away from it with, or actually in the build up to it, was, did MLS really think all the way through it in having that game against Cruz Azul and having that game in Leagues Cup, as opposed to having Messi against another MLS team from a marketing standpoint? Do you think that if they could recalculate it, or they could go back or be a little bit more intentional or a little bit more deliberate, that they would have done the same thing? Or it's just is what it is? This is when Messi showed up and that's what they have to work with.
I don't think they would have changed one thing about what happened. I don't think they care. I don't think they care who it was against. If it was Leagues Cup, MLS, CONCACAF Champions League, getting Messi on the field, getting eyeballs on the game. The fact, I think the only way it would have been different was that if the game was on the road. I don't know. I think it being in Miami was such a perfect way to introduce him, right? And let's also not get lost in the fact that him and Busquets trained for like 2-3 days tops, coming from vacation. The fact that they played like 35-40 minutes in the second half is insane to me. Right? I mean,
they also have like 15,000 training sessions together under their belts, though.
True, but I'm not talking about from two of them being on the same wavelength. I'm talking about a pure physical standpoint. I mean, Messi and Busquets probably stepped off the beach, did the introduction in Miami, trained twice, and said, "Okay, we're just going to step on the field and be the two best players on the field by a wide margin," which they both
by a wide margin.
It was clear to see, right? And that's the quality that you get when, you sign these two types of players. One thing that we did get right, we obviously got right Messi being protected by the refs. I think we saw that in the game-winning goal because, like I already stated, I don't really think it's a foul. But he got the whistle, that's fine. We know how it's going to be. The other thing we got right was that he's not doing a lot of moving when they don't have the ball. Okay. And that was one thing I did. I took a little mental note of, and it's funny because I actually texted one of our left backs, Dan Lovitz, who's played quite a lot of minutes for us. And I said, "Hey man, if Messi's going to play kind of tilted a little bit off to the right side of the field, we're going to have to, with the ball, build down your side. We are going, not to give away too many trade secrets here, but he's just not going to defend, right? And he shouldn't have to defend, but it was almost hilarious to see Cruz Azul with the ball, Messi stand in about a 5-yard little box in the same spot, maybe put a little bit of pressure here and there, and then as soon as they win the ball, get the ball at his feet, and he turns on the jets, right? It's like 0 to 100 in like 2 seconds. And you can already see the connection that he has with Busquets. You can actually see the connection that he has with Joseph Martinez as well, which looked pretty impressive, I have to say.
Who got that right? Who got that right, Dax?
I don't know what you're talking about. We were talking about Joseph Martinez scoring more goals than Giassi Zardes at one point, which I still don't know if that's going to happen. But yeah, you can tell that Joseph, he's got a little bit more pep in his step now that Leo's there with him.
The other thing that I think was really apparent for me, and Gordo, you and I have talked about this. We actually were on a field with Busquets, and Busquets is still the player that I've singled out throughout my career as the best individual that I've ever seen in person, the best individual soccer player. And the range of passing that this guy still has, he can drop a dime in a gallon of milk 100 yards away. I mean, it was incredible to see the ability that he had in connection with Leo, but also the places that he could put those passes, seemingly with no pressure on him or no pressure at dropping these dimes into those little pockets of space. But that's going to be tough for these teams to operate within, because if Busquets is on the ball in any place on the field, he's going to be able to find Messi. And then you're dealing with a Messi that is the best player in the history of the game. Did you pick up on Busquets at all, Gordo? Like, do you see him having that type of success in this league?
That he was the most impressive for me in that short amount of time, just because, like, I used to say this to guys, on a much smaller level, but on the field, it's like, know who you're passing to. I remember playing with guys that were just absolute donkeys. And then I'd be like, why are you passing the ball? He's going to lose it every time. And you could almost see that Busquets was like looking to the left and he was like, nope. And then he would just like spread between like three defenders. And it's perfect, right? Like he knows what he's going to do. And he's going to do that very well. And if he does do that, and when he does do that, because he's got so much quality, Messi is still dangerous. He's not going to defend, but he finds those little pockets, and every time he runs at you, he's going to create a goal scoring opportunity. And so, listen, I called it last week. I said, I don't think they'll win the championship. I mean, just watching them, I changed my mind kind of. Like Messi can do whatever he wants. Like he is going to, if they get it right and they get the right personnel on there, which is okay. It's the obvious. They have to get it right, obviously, but they do have a chance. I'm kind of going back on my word, and I wouldn't put it past these guys to put a run together if they can get some pieces around them to defend like that. That was only
Gordo going back on his word. I'm shocked. I gotta say,
yeah, that's a real.
Can we also
buster?
Can we also talk about Cruz Azul for a second? I mean, first of all, they played pretty well. They should have won the game, in my opinion. They had an insane amount of chances, but in the second half, there was one moment where Busquets gets on the ball in the middle of the field, and there's like not a Cruz Azul player within like 10 yards of him on either side. And I'm thinking, what are you guys trying to accomplish here? Like, do you want to give this guy an ocean of space? Even if you have a guy parked 2 feet from him, he's still going to be able to pick passes out, and you're just letting this guy dictate the entire flow of the game and find Messi in these little pockets where you guys are just getting hurt constantly. I just find it very, I don't know, it's almost like they were starstruck and they didn't know how to defend, and they weren't putting pressure on the ball and giving Busquets all this time and space. They were almost too focused on Messi. So look, when you play against Inter Miami with the team that they have, Gordo, I don't know if you remember this, but I can't remember exactly what year it was. I want to say it was 2018 when you were in Chicago with us. We played against Montreal Impact, CF Montreal, whatever you want to call them. And we had a guy named Mo Adams who was a young kid out of college, and he was an absolute bulldog, just absolutely fantastic defensively. Would win every tackle.
He played down in Atlanta for a little bit too, didn't he?
He did. Yes, he did, Gordo. He got traded from Chicago to Atlanta. But he was a central midfielder, and I'll never forget it. Our head coach at the time, Veljko Paunovic, basically just told Mo, hey, listen, Ignacio Piatti is one of the best players in the league. I want you to man mark this guy. I want you to stand on his toes. I don't care where he goes. You're playing as a right fullback because he's a left winger. But if on the odd instance he ends up in the middle of the field or on the right side of the field, I don't care. Go with him. Gordo, do you remember that?
Yeah, I do.
And Mo Adams, he played fantastic. He had a great game. He wouldn't leave this guy's pocket, and Piatti was really frustrated. I'm wondering if you're going to find some teams that tactically go that route, because I do think Messi's good and that influential. I don't know. I think it's all going to depend on the individual coach, but for me, it would seem to be beneficial if you said, all right, we trust in our 4 or 5 best attacking players to be able to score on this leaky Miami backline. Yeah. We're going to park our best defensive player right on Messi and just say, your job is to mark him. Do not let him have an influence on the game attacking wise. I'm not going to say it's going to work, right? We're talking about, apples and oranges here, but it reminds me back to that moment where it happened in Chicago and it was effective and we won the game. And I'm curious if you're going to see teams maybe go down that road. It's an interesting topic to think about.
Yeah, I think teams are going to have to do that.
That was Mo's. That was it. That was the only. He was young, right? And he wasn't. He needed to develop on the ball, right?
Yeah.
He was a bit young. I'm sure he's a lot better at that now. But he was a fantastic one-on-one defender. I think most teams in the sixth position are going to be asked to be doing a lot more on the ball. So naturally, you're going to get drugged out of position to be a man-on-man defender. I don't see too many teams doing that. I really don't. I mean, it would be smart to win the game, but I think the way that people want to express, use their own team and attack, it's not going to really work out that way.
If I'm Portland, I'm sticking Diego Chara right on Messi and saying, "Do not leave this guy's side."
Right.
I don't know. I would kind of disagree with that, Gordo. I mean, I think that especially with the situation that Miami is in, at least this year, they have a ton of injuries. They have, they are through a squad now that is really deep in the hole, and there's not going to be a ton of playmakers on that field regardless. If you park somebody on Busquets and park somebody on Messi, at least when you're out of possession and allow or force other players to win the game for them, seems like a plausible idea. Seems like a plausible way to play. There is something that I think that we probably need to touch on, though. So all the rumors now that we're kind of trickling out, right? Messi's coming to Miami. Busquets is coming to Miami. Jordi Alba is coming to Miami. Luis Suarez, the next on the list, is coming to Miami. They've been 3 out of 3. The rumor mill has been spot on. 1, do you think Luis Suarez comes to Miami? And 2, if Luis Suarez comes to Miami, is that a clear indicator that there will be new GAM, TAM, FAM, some type of influx in cash into the roster rules? Because I feel like this is the way that this league works. It's the way that this all happens. One team kind of gets a little bit of maybe a preview into what the league wants to do for the following years and the way that they want to build it. And then they get Luis Suarez on a deal that pays him nothing for the remainder of this year. But, you're adding another either DP slot or another kind of mid-level GAM player. Do you think that's going to happen? Dax, what are your thoughts?
I do think there will be some rule changes coming to MLS in the very near future. I don't think Luis Suarez is coming to MLS at least this year. I don't know the full ins and outs of his situation at Gremio, I believe he's at, but I know it's complicated.
Yep.
I know it's messy. You like that play on words? I just don't think it happens this year. I think there's too many complications with Leo Campana and Joseph Martinez as your strikers that you already have both of them on pretty big money. And I think we've seen, I'm not sure if it was Chris Henderson or someone in the Miami front office come out and say that, Campana and Joseph aren't going anywhere. So I don't think it happens this year. In 2024, that's a different story. I think it's certainly possible that MLS will institute rule changes in the offseason to give every team a fair chance to go and build a roster the way that you would think Miami's going to try to build a roster.
I would agree with that. I don't know enough about Suarez's contract situation. I think it all happened a little bit too soon to kind of speculate that everybody could make this happen in such a short time. But what I will say is there is an intern. There is a very lonely intern in the MLS headquarters right now, and he is printing a different color of Monopoly money for the MLS to start distributing out to teams. There is a lonely intern. He's printing out that blue money, and it's starting to go to everybody. That's 100%.
What do you think? What do you think, Gargs? You think it happens?
Oh my God, that's good. I think it does. I mean, it's hard to bet against the possibilities right now, right? I mean, the likelihood of all of these things falling into place as quickly as they did seemed too good to be true, too good to be reality, and now here we are. With Messi, that's definitely appointment viewing. I mean, he's mandatory viewing now, and he's alongside all of his buddies. So I would have to think that there's a real strong case, one, for the league to change its rules, which I think is a definite. I think Gordo's spot on. He might be helping out. He's probably applied for that job to print up the new Monopoly money. But I definitely think that Luis Suarez is on his way.
Gordo, just so you know, that real Monopoly, that Monopoly money, you can't use that to buy things in real life for your kids.
They've never given me that Monopoly money, buddy. I've dished money. I was dished out all leftovers, and that was the green American money.
That was more of the copper pennies.
That was the loose. That was the loose change.
Yeah,
the loose change in the couches.
Not here for you, Gordo.
So Dax, we talked about Messi and the game that he played in against Cruz Azul in Leagues Cup. You've now participated in a Leagues Cup match, albeit against an MLS side in the Colorado Rapids. I've called one in Atlas and NYCFC last night. I'll call another one tomorrow night at Red Bull Arena, but it's NYCFC versus Toronto. This will be an interesting one. Did it feel any different for you? Did the game have a different feel to it?
Once the game started, the answer to that question is no. But before the game started, it did have a little bit of a different feel, I got to say. The entire pregame procession ceremony was completely off the rails. And what I mean by that is we had the walkout. First of all, we had the referees come into the locker room and do like a roster number check. And it was absolutely, it was like a harken back to the old days of like when you used to play in remember Gordo's Superliga? You remember this? When the refs used to come in and they used to check out your jersey matched your name, right? We did that again, which was hilarious. And we had some really funny name pronunciations from the referee, I got to say. But then in the walkout, both teams didn't walk out together. You walked out kind of like a professional wrestler. They announce your name, and then you walk out with your kid one by one. So you have that whole procession, and then the captain has to read a prepared statement to the crowd, right? For the make sure that we don't have any discriminatory chants or things of that nature going on between fan bases. And I have to say, because Walker and Hani both didn't start for us, I was the captain and I had to read my little note, and I completely butchered the word discriminatory. And my brain went complete scrambled eggs mode, and I just totally blew it. And I got a lot of stick for it in the locker room after the game.
What did it
What's up?
What did it sound like?
I got halfway through the word, and then I didn't like my pronunciation, and I just completely stopped and went blank for like 2 seconds. And then I had to read it again. And I was just, and even then the opposing team captain, it was the goalkeeper. I'm completely, but Yarborough, was looking at me kind of smiling, laughing, like making fun of me, like, dude, you just completely butchered that. And I was like, yeah, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it.
Come on, bro. Are you going to get it? Do it.
So look, we obviously, like Garg said, playing an MLS team on the field, we both played relatively strong lineups. It did feel more like an MLS game, but the pregame stuff, it felt so foreign to us. But I got to say, I mean, obviously, it was a rough month for us at Nashville SC, losing some tough games, losing to some good teams. This tournament, I said it before, but it came at a good time for us. And, Colorado, they're a good team. I think they're a good team that's well coached, that's had some really bad results. I think that they are just lacking a little bit of a finisher, of a number 9, because they did create some chances against us. But we brought our big guns in off the bench. Anibal Godoy, Hani Mukhtar, and Walker Zimmerman came in and totally changed the game for us and allowed us to go on and get a very important victory. So, we're excited. We have a big game coming up against Toluca, and hopefully we can advance to the next round.
And Dax doubles his career assist total this year. Hey, you know what you guys got to do? How great would it be if you guys all came up with like an NFL dance, like a Ray Lewis, and like came out, and every time they announce you, everybody does their own little dance, like the old Ray Lewis, and then sprints out on the field.
That'd be great. That'd be great. We got to do it for Leagues Cup against Toluca. I'm going to tell the boys to come up with their own personal dances. At least the young guys. The young guys, I can force them to do it. Some of the older guys probably won't do it, but
yours like an Irish jig.
Yeah. They'll play. I need someone to play the bagpipes in the background, though.
That'd be good.
We did the national anthem with no teams on the field.
Yep, that was another thing they said that they did.
That was different. I had never seen that before. Also, calling the game from Citi Field, the Mets Stadium in Queens, there's a full soccer field in between the actual field that they put in the outfield and the booth. And I mean, it's like watching from the nosebleeds, if the nosebleeds had their own stadium and there was a separate section that were the nosebleeds above that. That's how deep you are on these calls. It's NYCFC can't get a stadium quick enough. I'm hopeful because the Queens area could be really cool if they had it, but it's not great. It's not a great setup. Were you
using your binoculars to call the game or what?
Dude, I just, obviously I'm a very small part of the game being the announcer. I really feel bad for these players, to be perfectly honest. I feel bad for the NYCFC players that have to play at Yankee Stadium and have to play at Citi Field because it's tough, man. Like these games they're tough to play in. The field is so small. The environment's different. And the environment, to be fair, at Citi Field was actually pretty good because there was a ton of Atlas fans. There was a ton of NYCFC fans, but the game experience is not great. And it's a little unfair for these guys that, especially now looking at all these incredible environments like Nashville, like St. Louis, like Minnesota, they're special, and these guys they're in a different place. I want to switch gears just a touch and talk about DC United because DC United is in an interesting spot right now. They certainly have a bunch of eyeballs on them for probably the last thing that they want to have eyeballs on them for. Something came out of that you guys shared. And I know that you have a personal connection to the trainer that was just relieved of his job, fired, that they announced this from the MLS All-Star appreciation post that came out last week. So MLS, obviously All-Star is in DC United. They brought the staff of DC United out to support the All-Star team. A photo gets taken with that staff, and the trainer makes, I guess, what could be considered or what has been considered a racist or homophobic or white nationalist. They kind of mention a lot of different things in their statement. This is DC United anyway, that could be considered that. And he was fired what seemingly was the next day. The other side of the coin is it's also a symbol that has been a game for decades, that everybody probably plays, where you put your hand in a circle with your fingers out and you hold that below your waist and you try and get other people to look at it. There's a lot there and there's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack within, the way that this goes down, the way that it ultimately happens. There was also some reports that came out too. The players were suspended for racist remarks and for physical altercation at training. DC United in also our nation's capital. So there's a number of layers to this story. And I'll be honest, I don't have a ton of insight or knowledge into the process that it all kind of transpired and unfolded. But I know that you guys, we were obviously keeping tabs on this as it goes along. And Gordo, I know that you were very, kind of passionate about the response and your response. What's your take on where it's at and the conversations that you've had either from that moment of when you found out about it or where you sit now?
Yeah. I was disheartened by it. Dax and I know Reed. Dax spent more years with Reed than I did. I spent 1 year and I got to know him very well. Everybody knows I'm in the training room, more often than not. And you
well
think
documented.
You think you get to know somebody, and I felt like I knew him, and not one bit of me would have thought that, or no, I know that he doesn't have any, racist beliefs or discriminatory, or running around with discriminatory thoughts in his mind. And so I wanted to know more. I was shocked by it. And so to look at the picture, if you go and it's a team photo and he's holding the thumb and the finger up below his waist. And I've played that game since I was a kid. And I just think that throwing out racist, allegations is a serious thing. I think it's a very serious thing, and it's attacking his character. And I know he's distraught about it. So I reached out, and the first thing he said to me was, literally, I'm shocked. This is a game that I've played since I was a kid. So he thought the same thing that I thought. And I meant to do a little bit more research on it. But what I do know is even if now it may have some racist implications. I'm not sure, but things change very fast. I think that if it is that, I don't think that he meant it as that. And, for them to kind of go and do that, I just want to know a little bit more about it. I want to know if that was an excuse to get rid of him. But I'm not really okay with the slander and, them kind of throwing his character out there in public and kind of using him, I would say, as an example, because they're one of their players got busted with a racial slur. And that's something you say kind of intentionally, but this, I think, was kind of, he was being playful, and he'll regret it for sure. But I don't think it meant what they're saying that it meant. So I feel bad for him.
Yeah,
I would have to say that what he did was also intentional. I don't think that you could say that was unintentional because he was, but maybe misconstrued. I think is probably a better way to put that, because the player, you're probably right. He obviously calls another player specifically targeted, which is intentional in calling somebody that, but also at the same point in time, we don't have specifics on what that language was used, and we also don't have specifics on how DC United kind of viewed this or what that process was, which I think your point is valid and well taken. Dax, have you guys talked about it in the locker room? Like what's going on within Nashville and kind of how they have perceived this? Because I know that the soccer community as a whole is certainly talking about it.
Yeah, we spoke about it a little bit on the surface level. But I want to touch on it more from the perspective Gordo talked about, the personal level. I was in Chicago for 3 years, and Reed, the trainer who obviously is at the center of this controversy, he was my trainer for 3 years. And I want to speak to the person that I knew and the character that this guy had that I know. Gordo touched on it a little bit, but in my interactions with Reed, every single day, thousands of interactions. You see these people every single day.
there's not 1 ounce of my body or my mind or my heart or my soul that thinks that this guy has a racist bone in his body. There's not 1 ounce of me that thinks that this guy is a white supremacist. Now, that was my interaction with him. That was when we saw each other every single day for 3 years. It's been 4 years since he's been my athletic trainer. So I'm willing to postulate that it is, no matter how remote of a chance it is, there is always the possibility that in those 4 years, Reed decided to go down a different path and decided that that was going to be the path that he goes down. I don't think that's the case, and I know that to be true, but it's a fair thing to speculate on. If he did, then, maybe I'm totally wrong about what I'm about to say. But in knowing him and his character, I'm 99% certain that what he said to Gordo is a fact. He was playing a game that he has played as a kid since he was 10 years old, however old it is. This game, by the way, where you, like you described, Gargs, you attach your thumb and your pointer finger and you have the 3 fingers out and you try to get people to look and you say, gotcha, made you look. It's almost like the punch buggy game, right? You see a punch buggy, you say punch buggy, you punch them and no punch backs. Like you get someone, sure. they look at the circle and you punch them or whatever, you get them and that's that, right? Childish. If Reed is guilty of anything, I think it is immaturity. I think it's a little bit childish, and I think it's a little bit of ignorance. And I say that because I was ignorant to this as well. When I first saw this, I told my wife about it, and my wife said, "Well, yeah, that's the AOK symbol, which everyone used to say, hey, Gargs, how you doing today?" If you did that symbol and you held it up and you said, "I'm doing okay," everyone was just like, all right, that's a symbol that someone's doing well. He's fine. He's okay. Now it's been adopted by white supremacists. And I have to say I'm ignorant to this because I didn't know that. And if I'm Reed and I don't know about this either, and I'm just trying to play a joke and play a little bit childish kids game, and now I lose my job over this, I'm pretty distraught. And I think he is distraught. And I think he'll reflect on it and he'll say, you know what, I did make a mistake because it's an official team photo. I shouldn't have done that, right? No matter what you think, how it can be misconstrued or not, you should probably just realize you're in a privileged position. And you should probably just go through with the photo because it will be heavily distributed, right? And so any gestures, no matter how innocent they are, the day and age that we live in now, you have to be very careful. And so I feel really bad for Reed. I don't think he is what some people are trying to make him out to be. And to Gordo's point, this is a really sad situation because this is going to follow him everywhere he goes. And every job interview he has, he will have to talk about it. And it's something that I think is a very, very serious thing to get mixed up in, because we can all agree there is absolutely first of all, we have no time in society for white supremacy, racism, discrimination of any kind. But especially if you work in a professional sports league, you do need to hold yourself to a higher standard. And so I think this is a really tough situation. I think DC United in general is under fire because of some of the other things that are occurring at that club. And I don't think that the Reed Whitney that I knew and that I know is that type of person. So you just have to be careful out there.
Yeah, it's something that, you guys obviously have a personal relationship with him. You knew him intimately. Being in a locker room with somebody for a long time, I feel like you do get to know them pretty well from a core. I think this sport and professional sports in a lot of ways shows you people's character that they can't hide, whether they're willing to work, whether they're willing to track back, what that looks like in high intensity, high emotional moments. So you do see things that you wouldn't normally see in a workplace. My initial reaction to you guys when you started sharing this out was, probably the other side of things. In not knowing him and just completely surface level, you could see where it
looks bad. It looks bad.
It looks bad. And, he, not to make light of the situation, but he looks like he could have a set of horns on his head and being, having been stormed the Capitol at, living in DC for the past 4 years, that has undergone a very significant, just challenge to its identity, a challenge to, to where we're at in a political landscape. And then to take it one step further, being in an all-star photo, pretty incredible moment and pretty incredible opportunity to be playing a little kid's game. It did seem pretty childish to say like, okay, well, I'm going to take this chance to do that. Now, all kidding aside, I also thought that, okay, if DC United has taken another step here and not allowed Reed to apologize or to even own up to either being, making a pretty sizable mistake here, but I was also ignorant to that as well. I had no idea that meant, or that white supremacists had taken that on as a symbol of whatever whatever they're trying to adopt it as. But all of it, just from an instant reaction type place, it seems like there's more to this story than maybe they've allowed, which I think goes back to what you're saying, Gordo. And if you're going to make such a significant judgment and fire somebody over something like that, I think at this point, people, one, that are intimately involved with the game, intimately involved with these sports franchises as they are, deserve probably a little bit more of an explanation and deserve a little bit more of a thought process, because now you're right. This will follow him for the rest of his life. And that's a tough place to be. Right, wrong, or indifferent. It is where he is at. And if that's the conclusion that DC United gets to, then they're probably in a fair position to make that call, but they should also share that as well, is kind of where I'm at in the whole thing. But it's tough, and it's tough to not know. It's tough to not show or share anything behind the curtain with an accusation like that. Through all of this, all of these kind of storylines and soccer conversation. We haven't even mentioned Mbappe really in any significant way. A $1.1 billion offer for a year. We haven't really talked a ton about the Women's World Cup, which is potentially unprecedented if the women are able to three-peat. Is soccer at a point where it's dominating all conversation, or is that just me kind of reading into this? Because I was also at a point previously in my life where I'd be interested in what was going on in NFL preseason camp, and we weren't talking about soccer. And now here we are talking about Leagues Cup. We're talking about Messi. We're talking about the Women's World Cup, and it's just dominating the space. Do you guys see this changing at all? Because I feel like we are trending in a very, very fast sprint of a direction, and almost not a 180, but where soccer is being treated maybe at a new level, maybe a layer above, with the respect and attention that it potentially deserves. Are you guys feeling that, or are we just kind of in the heat of the summer?
1,000%. So Dax is still in a locker room. Soccer surrounds him every single day, right? I'm in an office full of people that knew nothing about soccer before I got here. And who knows if they're talking about it just because I'm here, but I don't think so. And what I do know is that the everyday American is more interested in soccer right now than they've ever been before. Messi's done the large share of that for everybody, but now of Mbappe. People are asking me about Mbappe. I thought it was 10 years, 1.1 for 10 years. No,
1 year.
1 year.
1 year.
So these guys, these guys, did they set aside
1 year, 336 million to PSG?
Yeah, it's wild, right? And so these guys are making a splash, and not just our sport, but they did it in golf as well. They start throwing out these astronomical numbers at these players just to try to get a foothold on these sports, and it's changing the game. And it's not. I don't think it's changing the game for the betterment of the game, because these numbers, they're not sustainable. Right. And I think I saw something like they set aside $77 billion just for transfer fees alone. And they're going to start throwing this money out to everybody. And now it's going to just inflate the entire market of players that I don't know if clubs can keep up with that. And I wonder what the ripple effect is from that. But to your point, yes, good, bad, or indifferent. It is. Everybody's going to talk about whether it's a college swimmer getting offered that contract or a soccer player. It just so happens to be soccer players right now. And Mbappe's, arguably one of the best players in the world. So yeah, I mean, people, it's a buzz.
Dan, I don't know how much you guys are on social media, specifically Twitter, but to speak to kind of Gordo's point here, I saw, obviously, with the Mbappe news, one of our minority owners, a small basketball player named Giannis, tweeted out if the Saudis are throwing that type of money at basketball players. You got JJ Watt, recently retired NFL player, tweeting out about, can he come out of retirement if they throw that type of money at him in a new football league? Yes, the soccer is dominating the conversation right now. And I take Gordo's point. I put a lot of stock in it because he's not in the locker room anymore. He was spot on. I'm surrounded by soccer every day, so I don't know if I have my soccer blinders on. But Gordo's interacting with people that don't have really any stock in the game and any skin in the game. And if they're asking him all these questions and wanting to know more about certain things, it speaks to me that the game is certainly getting more of a foothold in terms of the mainstream, right? Soccer's always been, especially in the US, we've always had our little corner, our little spot in the corner where, all the diehards talk about it. And we don't really we're at the little kids table, we don't have a seat at the adult table. And it feels like now we have a seat for Thanksgiving dinner at the adults table. And we are being talked about more regularly now than we ever have been. And I do think a World Cup year, whether it's a men's or women's World Cup, I think that has a lot to do with it. But every time you do have a World Cup, that just inches the game. It doesn't inch the game along like a normal year. It kind of leaps the game along, right? We take like a massive stride forward, right? And so the Women's World Cup, it's off to a great start. I've tried my best to tune into some of the games. Not in the middle of the night. I can't do that with two kids. You guys know how that goes. But some of the games that are played,
sometimes that's an easier option. You're
not for me.
Might as well throw the game on.
My kids are sleeping through the night. I'm golden, but I can't wake up.
Wow.
I need my rest. But
guy.
I will. I did try to. I watched. Obviously Messi's debut and the Women's World Cup game. I had them on at the same time, so I was trying to do both. And I'm locked in. I'm all in on the Women's World Cup. I'm the one on this show with the predictions that seem to come true. So I do think the women will three-peat. I'm fully
really going out on a limb.
I'm fully backing them there. But I come with data, man. I am one of the biggest Sophia Smith fans you will ever meet. I think she's fantastic. And I don't think it's out of the realm to question whether this U.S. women's team would struggle a little bit. There has been a small changing of the guard, if you will, right? And I think we have the right amount of experience in Alex Morgan and Megan Rapinoe and Alyssa Nair and Julie Ertz, and the right amount of a youth infusion with some of these younger players coming through who are just so exciting to watch. Trinity Rodman, Sophia Smith, these players are giving the U.S. a new breath of life. And I think it's a really good balance that they found. What I will say is I think that the rest of the world is also catching up, though. And I say that because the Vietnam game, I think it would be reasonable to assume that the U.S. could have won the Vietnam game 7-8-9-0. And Vietnam gave a really good account of themselves. They surprised me. And I think a lot of other teams, especially early on in this tournament, some of the results that you would have expected, they haven't happened. There have been some good draws by some of these smaller teams against traditional powers. And I think that the U.S., I think that they will win it, but I don't think the road is going to be easy. I think it's going to be a very rocky road. I think they're going to have a really big test coming up against the Netherlands. And I think that's going to be one of the best teams that they're going to play in this tournament. So I think we'll get a better idea of just how far this women's team can take the World Cup after they play the Netherlands. But yeah, Gordo, don't be upset that I'm going Women's World Cup to three-peat, the U.S. women. I think that you're probably going to copy me and not, have your own original take. But that's where I stand with the Women's World Cup.
You didn't. You,
I have
you
a
mentioned.
take.
You mentioned. All right, go ahead. Let's hear the take, Gordo.
I have a take, and it's different, and it's not going to be well received. I'll tell you that right now. I think the Women's World Cup has been garbage. I think it's been absolute garbage.
In what way?
Why?
I think I listen. I love our girls. I support our girls. I think our girls are fantastic. I've been tuning in to more World Cup. Usually I just watch our girls. I've been watching some random teams, and I think it just hasn't been good quality. It hasn't been exciting. There's not a lot of goals. I think after the first round, there was one game where both teams scored. It just hasn't been exciting for me.
But do you think that's due to nerves? It's early in the World Cup. I think that some teams are, there's a lot of young players. I think it's a little bit of nerves, right?
It could be, Dax. It could be, Dax. And I'm going to keep tuning in. And like I said, I respect our girls wholeheartedly and I support them, right? But I don't think the quality is there. So I'm interested to see if there's some more exciting games. I just haven't seen it. It just feels like the NBA playoffs to me. It's like what four teams are going to be there, and otherwise you don't want to watch them. You don't want to watch the 7 and 8 team play. I mean, it's just like it's not exciting until it gets down to it, and I feel like it's leading into that. We know who's going to be there. There's four good teams. I think they're all going to face each other in the end, and it's going to be exciting in the end. But right now, it's just not doing it for me. It's just not. I'm not seeing. I remember when, Lloyd was playing and she's scoring goals from half field and she's got a hat trick, and it was just more exciting then, and it was closer, and also it was closer. It was in Canada.
Yeah, that was also a final, but your point's fair. The U.S. did have, I think they had like 30 shots against Vietnam. They just couldn't actually finish. But two things that came out of the last week of some of this stuff, which I wanted to touch on. One, Brazil's goal against Panama. If you guys haven't seen that, it's absolutely insane. I mean, you won't see a better goal than the Brazilian women that they put on Panama. And two, there's also there's an advertisement going around right now for the French Women's Federation. Did you see this? Have you guys seen this advertisement?
No.
It's pretty cool, man. So it's basically a bunch of highlights, and they've altered all of the highlights into the men's team. So it's Mbappe and it's Giroud, and it's a bunch of men's players that are ultimately finishing these plays, right? And at the end of the commercial, they go back in and they pull all the men out, and it's actually the women. So they had just augmented the digital aspect of these, and they're phenomenal goals. But it was pretty cool to see that, very creative advertisement. I think
that just scares me with AI.
When it is. Yeah, it's pretty wild. Go look it up and watch it. But it is also tough, to your point, Gordo, to get connected to a World Cup that is on the other side of the world. And when these games are at 2:00 and 3:00 and 4:00 in the morning, I don't, especially with the amount that is on the tube right now and the amount of soccer that is being talked about, it's tough to feel great about waking up and checking out results. Like that for me is like once a game's gone and it's already happened, I have a tough time revisiting it. But I do want to ask one more question before we jump off here, because you guys brought up a really good point in the Dax's analogy of being at the Thanksgiving table. So Gordo, you talked about obviously Live, right? And Live Golf, and now having to partner with PGA Tour, right? And what that looks like as it moves forward. They essentially forced their way into the conversation because money is no object. I went over to Qatar and Dubai this past World Cup, and I saw some of those games. And one of the prevailing themes that came out of that trip that everybody told me was money is no object here. And they kept saying it. And I didn't really understand it. And now they're essentially putting that into practice. A $1.1 billion offer for one player with $80 billion set aside for transfers. The cities that these guys are building. Do you think that owners in the United States are concerned about what the Saudis are doing? Do you think that these guys are now somewhat worried that, hey, LeBron, come on over here to Saudi Arabia. We're going to build you 30 stadiums and you guys can live here and play over this side of the world. Do you think that they've started considering that at all?
No. I remember China was trying to do that. They got Starbury over there. They threw a bunch of money at them. You can't get enough guys to go over there. I mean,
dude, China is not Saudi Arabia money.
Okay, I get it. I don't know. I mean, like Dak said, I mean, he made a good point. Like all these guys, it'd be stupid it'd be really hard not to turn down 200 million, right? It really would. So it's not out of the question. I think it's a blip. I think it's a little flash in time where they're going to try to get some guys over there. But if LeBron goes over there, how many guys are going to follow?
Well, LeBron's not a great example because his career is over. He's not going anywhere. But the next player his career is not over. Whoever that next player is, whoever
Cristiano's over there. Cristiano's over there right now. How many
his career's done too.
Him? No,
right. His career's done too.
I know it is, but how many people have followed him?
A fair amount. Benzema went. I mean, players, prime players have gone. Not a ton. But some have. But if they keep throwing obnoxious money at everybody, do you think that these owners are, at minimum, concerned about having to inflate every player that they employ, their salaries, and at maximum, concerned about losing their leagues to the Middle East? Do you think so. This conversation is happening at all?
No, because we're talking about the offer for Mbappe. It's for 1 year. And that signifies to me that the Saudi Arabian league knows its place. They know that he is not going over there if it's for a 5-6 year contract. He's not doing it. That's why it's for 1 year. They know he wants to play at Real Madrid because you know what they can't replicate? You know what nobody, no matter how much money you throw at the Saudi Arabian league, can replicate? You can't replicate history. You can't replicate passion. You can't replicate the history and fan bases that these other clubs in Europe have built up. Now,
right. But you can create a future.
Yeah, you can, but you're not getting any player. You're not getting any player who plays for a massive national team, who has other interests around the world at the top clubs. They're not going to go over there and commit to spending the prime years of their career just for money, because they're going to make a lot of money playing elsewhere. It's not going to be Saudi Arabian money. Don't get me wrong. That's life-changing generational money. But I still think the Premier League, the Bundesliga, the Spanish League, the Champions League, the call of how prestigious it is to win those competitions is still going to keep most players in their primes there. As far as MLS owners, I don't think MLS owners are really too bothered by it. I think that MLS is pretty secure in its place in the global market in terms of where we stand with developing players, with the infrastructure that we've created, the media coverage of just the U.S. market in general. Are we going to lose out on a few older players like Benzema, like Ronaldo? Of course. But again, I still think that MLS has the power to go out and get other players, guys like Busquets, guys like Messi, who have a draw to a different lifestyle. You can't replicate the American lifestyle, Dan. We know that. And that is always going to be a massive draw for certain players who have made great money in their careers and they want to live in LA and Miami and New York. Saudi Arabia, it doesn't matter what you build. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at them because they don't care. So no, I think it's a small blip on the radar. I think that, yes, some players are going to go over there at the end of their careers for sure. But I think Gordo's right. I don't think it's going to shift the market that big.
I think that's one of the most archaic takes I've heard out of you in a long time. Dax, you're usually the more progressive thinker of the two of you and Gordo. And I would say that I agree with a lot of what you're saying. Everybody wants to come to the United States. Busquets just said it the other day, and Leo obviously proved it, right? He turned down a boatload of money. But there's ways that these guys are going to start buying themselves into conversations. And whether that's creation of leagues, whether that's buying up Champions League spots, whatever it is, it seems like it's going to take for them to get a hold at minimum of part of the conversation. They are willing to do it. And
I don't think it's happening anytime soon. Well, give me your timeline. Give me your timeline then, Dan. Over under 5 years.
Over under 5 years for what?
Whatever you're talking about, for them to buy, I don't know. I don't even know what you're talking about. Buying into Champions League.
5 years. I would say the Saudi League in 5 years will be a part of the conversation. And to what degree, it's hard to know.
Well, it won't be in the UEFA Champions League because they're not in Europe.
The only way they're going to get into the conversation.
So there can't be a new Champions League? There can't be a wrinkle in the way that soccer happens because it's not. It's all buttoned up and they follow the rules.
Listen,
and they don't.
I think they're gonna try their best. I don't think it's gonna take.
I don't know, man. I couldn't say. Could you have predicted them making a $1 billion+ offer for Mbappe yesterday?
No, but again, that's just a gut feeling. I don't think players in their primes that want to spend the majority of their careers playing for respectable leagues and clubs, I don't think they're going to go. That's just my opinion.
The only way they're going to get into the conversation is how they're already in the conversation. They have to join another league and buy a team and then throw their money out there.
And then they're going to still pay the players in those leagues. They're not going to pay. Right. No players are going to go play in the Saudi league.
They can't make a Saudi league. You're going against what you originally were saying.
No, I'm not. I think that they're building cities. They're building civilizations, guys. This is. I mean, maybe I'm on some Hollywood stuff here, but
Dan, let's do a little test. Other than Ronaldo and Benzema, what other players have gone over and signed in Saudi Arabia that you know of in their primes that would be considered world-class stars?
I don't know. I don't have anybody.
Because it's not going to move the needle. Maybe they will get a superstar here and there to go over there in their prime, but I don't think it's going to change much.
Yeah, I think you guys are really wrong. I do. I think that money changes a lot of things. It's not everything. I completely agree with you, but the staggering amount of wealth and the staggering amount of difference in zeros that they're potentially throwing at people, I think could change things. And I think I don't think anybody thought Live was going to be anything either. Everyone was like, nah, we're not going to do that. And then sure enough, one leads to another. And now they're building golf courses and now they're a part of PGA Tour.
Apples and oranges, buddy. There's two. There was a PGA Tour and the Live Golf Tour.
We're not talking apples and oranges here, Dex.
In terms of the sport, yes, you are.
If they offered you $1 million a year to do this podcast over there, would you move your family over there?
There's a number that I would do it for. Absolutely. Is there not a number that you would go in for a year, 2 years to change your life?
Yeah, but 1 or 2 years is not going to create.
Because I haven't been offered to go and do a podcast yet.
I wonder what that market's like. We should check it out.
There is a number, Dan, for sure. There is a number, but
I'll go do the recon. I mean, there's a number for everybody is my point. And these.
Well, yeah, of course. But you're asking me if it's going to completely change the landscape. There will be some changes for sure. But no, I still don't think if you offer a 22-year-old Brazilian $100 million a year to go play in the Saudi league right now, and Man United comes over and offers that same Brazilian $10 million a year, I think he's going to sign with Man United.
He would be wrong to do that.
I'm just saying, even whatever that I'm not talking about this also coming from someone who is a journeyman who couldn't even sniff the numbers that we're talking about over here. So yes, obviously,
right.
But I just don't think that I just don't think that the draw is going to be there. But there is a number. Everyone's got a number.
We'll put a pin in it because we've already reached our max capacity. But I do think that we're going to have to follow along here with some of these topics. So thanks for tuning in, and we will be back soon. Messi on tonight. Gordo, I know you're watching. We'll reconvene.